Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Live TV Ratings Talk. I'm Brandon Thurston, broadcasting live from Buffalo, New York, where we have another week, and we have an AEW Dynamite number that just came out this afternoon, and it is just short of Raw's key demo rating in the ages of 18 to 49. 0.48 for AEW Dynamite, a 0.49 for Raw on Monday. Of course, the AEW Dynamite episode was the Grand Slam episode from Arthur Ashe Stadium. AEW just short of 1.3 million viewers here. This is still the third most watched AEW Dynamite in the history of the program. And just short of WWE Raw at nearly 1.8 million viewers, and 642,000 of those viewers in the key demo to 627,000 of AEW Dynamite's viewers on Wednesday in the key demo. So this was in the past 2 weeks, the week before the beginning of the NFL season, in which Raw began to go against Monday Night Football. So the week before that, AEW beat Raw on the demo. Yes, I'm going to say beat Raw on the demo. And then in the first week of the Monday Night Football season, with Monday Night Football on both ESPN and ABC, AEW beat Raw on the demo again. But this week, with Monday Night Football on only ESPN, for whatever it's worth, Raw just ahead of AEW Dynamite in the demo. Of course, well ahead in viewership, and Smackdown well ahead of either of those over on Fox, with its wider reach on the Fox broadcast network. We are streaming live on YouTube from my Wrestlenomics supercomputer. I can barely hear myself in the monitor, but I think I'm coming through okay because there's a lot of bounce in the meter. I don't have quarters yet, for anyone asking, but I expect to have quarters, though. Pretty good chance I will later in the night. That'll be on Patreon first, and yeah, I always put it out on Twitter too. But the deeper breakdown on Patreon. If we look deeper into the demos, we can see that AEW Dynamite was ahead of Raw in male viewers, 18 to 49. With female viewers, though, Raw was definitely ahead by 16%. This M18 to 49 edge that Raw had, or I'm sorry, that Dynamite had on Raw was driven by the older half of the male key demo. Male viewers 35 to 49, Dynamite ahead by 8%. So as you can see in the younger half, Raw ahead by 5%. What does this mean in real numbers? Let's go to the real numbers. These numbers in thousands. Male viewers 18 to 34, Raw 140,000, AEW Dynamite 133,000. And then in the older half, we can see Dynamite ahead right here of Raw, 301 to 280. All other demos, though, we go back to our comparison chart here. All other demos, though, Smackdown ahead of Dynamite, Raw ahead of Dynamite. Some close margins in the, if you combine the female viewers, 1% edge for Raw in viewers 35 to 49. 2% lead, of course, in 18 to 49 overall. Female viewers, again, up by 18% in the key demo. P50 Plus, where is P50 Plus? It's cut off on this. You can't quite see it, can you? I've got it cropped out here somehow. But watch this. P50 Plus. I was trying to hide it from you. Yes. There's a asterisk here to let you know that this is Shoba's daily information too. Let me fix that. There we go. P50 Plus, a 78% lead Raw had over Dynamite. If we look at the demos, I've got an interesting breakdown here of just look at the different demographic makeup. I think a lot of people are aware of this, but let's just look at it in some more of a direct comparison here with real numbers and real percentages. Let's get my bookmarks out of the way here too. These are real numbers. Look at this. Look at this in a stacked, standardized chart in a moment. We've got some slightly different data across programs here because we don't get P50 Plus data for Smackdown, and we don't get that for Impact. So what I've got here is, here's in the black, P50 Plus. In the light gray, we've got P217. And so that's everything outside the demo. About 90% of everything outside the demo is P50 Plus, just the nature of TV at this point. Very few kids watching linear TV. Lots of people over the age of 50, though, watching linear TV. And then, so in the case of SmackDown, that's just combined into this gray bar, this dark gray bar. So these are the numbers where you can see, if you just imagine that these gray and black bars were to go away, you can see how close Dynamite and Raw are. This is the most recent episode for each of these programs, by the way. So you can see that comparison. And you can see how NXT, with its, what is this, 750,000 viewers this week, has more viewers than Rampage does. Yes, Rampage is at a different time, is at a later time that is disadvantaged to comparison with NXT that's on at 8. But you can see how Rampage has substantially more viewers within the demo. But let's look at that in a standardized percentage chart, where you can see more than half of WWE programs' viewers are outside the demo. Stronger though, at least Raw seems to be stronger with kids. I'm estimating this, and if we look at the spreadsheet where I actually do estimate this, we can take a look at. There's an error range here because I'm using the Showbuzz rating to estimate it. So if we look at my margin of error, and let's make this way bigger so you can actually read it. The P217 for, let's see here, Raw is about 110,000. That's got a margin of error somewhere between 104 and 116. So, and then Dynamite is here with its 61, somewhere between 55 and 67. So well ahead, nearly twice as many kids watching Raw as SmackDown. It seems these are not real numbers. I would say these are. This range is real in terms of the Nielsen number, but these are not the real Nielsen. I think Nielsen would report this, would be giving this data to its customers, the P217. I'm almost certain they are, right? But I'm basically taking P2 plus the total audience and subtracting out of it P50 and P18 to 49. What you're left with is everything 17 and under. So it would seem that kids are watching WWE in greater proportion than they are watching Dynamite. So if we go back, we could just to see how Dynamite has nearly 50% of its audience last night in the demo. Rampage has more than 50% of its audience in the demo last Friday night, and every other program is more than 50% outside the demo. Why does the demo matter? Well, ad rates is one reason. I've talked about that at length in other live streams here, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll try to address it. Other things I want to get to here, I've got, as usual, 5 things on the post-it note this week, just comparing WWE and AEW, which always makes people have feelings. That's the first one. We've done that. And I had an interesting YouTube comment, which we will share with you now. We will not identify the user, but I thought this was an interesting thought that we can spring off from. And I think it's a widely felt feeling among a lot of wrestling fans and among a lot of people who I see, reacting to my work. This user, I think this was a YouTube comment. This person said, "Since WWE's product is getting so unbearably bad, surely their future TV deals won't be as good, right? The lack of quality has got to catch up with them sooner or later." And I think this is a great example of what I've sometimes called of a yearning among wrestling fans for economic justice, particularly wrestling fans who are not satisfied with the WWE product. Eventually, that's got to catch up with them. Eventually, there's got to be some sort of economic consequence for WWE for putting on the product that I or many people perceive as a bad product, right? There's got to be a consequence. But as we'll run through here, I've got several slides here. We're just going to try to speed through them because, as you can see, there is some evidence in the metrics that WWE's popularity has declined over the last several years. We got Raw falling in 2019 and 2020 before the pandemic and during it, worse than the rate of cable overall. We've got this idea that the network, the WWE Network, would attract 3 to 4 million subscribers. It got about halfway there and then stalled after 2018, again, before the pandemic. We've got ticket sales from 2017 on, both average and total, declining from 2017 forward before the pandemic. We've got product licensing revenue declining from 2017 on, again, before the pandemic. We've got merchandise sales. Venue merchandise sales are largely driven by attendance, which we just showed was down. But even e-commerce from 2017 to 2019 was on the decline. E-commerce, in fairness, did really well for WWE in the year of 2020. But we can see those trends. And then Google web search in the US and worldwide on the decline since 2016. Looks to be doing a little bit better lately, though, since the return of fans. So all of these things would seem to indicate to you, well, WWE's popularity seems to be on the decline, at least between the years of 2016 and 2020. Sort of an annual decline we see. Disappointing network numbers, merchandise, TV ratings, sort of a mixed bag. Ticket sales down, licensing revenue down, merchandise down, mind share that might be reflected through Google web search strongly down. So what's happening here? That's got to result in some sort of punishment, financially, economically, for WWE. But no, that's not the case. WWE's revenue is at an all-time high, even when you adjust for inflation. In the Attitude Era doesn't touch this era, even when you adjust for inflation for revenue. But what about profitability? More importantly, profitability too is at an all-time high, even when you adjust for inflation. In today's dollars, the Attitude Era generated about $93 million in net income. That's the most final measurement of profit after taxes. $91 to $93 million in profit. That's the Attitude Era. That's as good as it gets. But here, in this era, last year, $132 million in net income. Looking like it's going to be even higher when this year is all said and done. And why is that the case, as many Wrestlenomics listeners and readers and viewers know? Well, it's because of the increase in business revenues that WWE has. They don't rely so much on direct-to-consumer revenues, certainly not like in the old days when wrestling was basically a ticketing business, maybe a pay-per-view business, in the late 80s and onward, where consumers were directly making purchases that supported this business. More than ever now, this is a business that is driven by its TV rights fees. The majority of these revenue is from TV rights fees that networks guarantee to pay them, regardless really of their television viewership performance, at least in the short term, during the term of the deal. Current US TV deals for WWE are 5 years long. We are roughly in the middle of that term. We can quickly find where we are in that term. Let's look at the map. We are right about here. So we're not even halfway through the 5-year deal. And over this time too, by the way, the payments to WWE and probably to AEW too get higher and higher. That is what they call guaranteed escalating television rights fees. You sign a contract that guarantees that we'll pay you a little bit more each year for the duration of the term. So that's why there really isn't any justice in this world. Because what's going to happen? Will WWE get a worse deal, get a lesser deal than they have now? Well, if we look at, let's just this week for an example, which I think is not that far out of the norm. Well, Smackdown on Friday was the second most watched program in the demo. Only Big Brother ahead of it. You can see AEW, though, Rampage did pretty well too. The 5th most watched program, despite it being at 10 o'clock. Raw split up into 3 rows for whatever reason. But Raw, even against all of this Monday Night Football programming and the programming on ESPN that was around it that did really well, Raw still 13th, maybe 14th overall. And I have this weekly breakdown here, which we might as well look at right now. If we look at the top shows on television overall, at least among original programming, we've got Smackdown, the 31st most watched program in the last 7 days. So this is last week, Thursday through yesterday. So I've got Raw averaged together here, the 39th most watched program on TV in the last 7 days. And Dynamite just right below it. This is all, of course, sorted in the key demo. If we were talking about total viewership, this would be a very different story. But in terms of the key demo, which I would think is the most important metric in television viewership, because it's telling you about who your subscribers are, who are watching TV, who are probably going to be involved in that business as consumers for quite some time, because they're probably going to live pretty long lives at this point if they're in the 18 to 49. And their eyeballs for ad dollars, for advertising, is more valuable than it is for P50 plus. People buy ads for P50 plus too, but they're not as valuable as the ads that are bought for the 18 to 49 demographic. And if we scroll down further, we can probably find Rampage at 59. If we scroll down further, we will eventually find NXT at 104. There it is. And we would have to scroll pretty far to find Impact. I don't even know if Impact's on here. Oh, because Impact didn't make the top 150 on its day, so it's not even on this list. It would be, what did Impact do in a demo rating? Yeah, I don't know. It would be, yeah, it would be complicated to figure out. It's pretty far down there though, right? We've got how many programs in here? We've got, is it 1,000? No, it's about 800. So it's not. Probably not within the top 800 programs on television in the demo. But anyway, is the question being, is let's go back to that comment too, just to, why am I talking about what I'm talking about right now? Surely their future TV deals won't be as good, right? Right? I don't think so. I think they're going to be just fine, because they're still doing really well among other programming generally. And if we look at this is just an example of 1 week, right? But this is pretty exemplary of what's happening over the long term. Where I have somewhere in here, I do have a list of what's the average rank for these programs in 18 to 49. Smackdown is on broadcast, so we don't have this data isn't as neatly organized. I have to figure out something so I can give you some sort of rank for this in the future, because the data certainly can be put together in such a way to relate that information. But number one, Raw is averaging a number one ranking for the year in 2021 so far. Better than it was doing even in prior years. We can talk about how, in all those other metrics I just showed you, how WWE is on the decline. But among programming generally, if anything, Raw is improving. NXT is hovering somewhere around the 20s on its night. This is a daily ranking, by the way. And Dynamite in this year, since it's not been going against NXT, its viewership has really improved. They've had the addition of stars like CM Punk and Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole lately too. And Dynamite doing better this year than last year, averaging number 5 on its night. I would imagine if you broke this down by quarter, they're averaging closer to number 1 or number 2 at this point. And I should be putting this information together for Rampage too. But Rampage, of course, has only had, I think, 6 episodes at this point. So there's that. Is there going to be economic justice anytime soon? I doubt it. I think WWE is in a position. This is my tentative position, is that I think WWE is going to be getting at least a moderate increase in TV rights fees in its next round. Things can change a lot between now and the time that deal gets done. Probably 2 years from now, roughly. There's that. But AEW, I continue to think, is in an even better position in terms of a multiplication of their rights, because they're so undervalued, because they're a new property. There's some talk this week, I think, coming out of an interview that Tony Khan, AEW CEO Tony Khan, did with Bloomberg, where he talked about how AEW programs have the most affluent wrestling audience. Clearly, he's referring to WWE here. This would make one think that the median income, which is something that you can get from Nielsen data, the median income for AEW viewers is higher than that of WWE viewers. I have asked around about this from people who have access to this kind of information from Nielsen, and I have confirmed that yes, the median income for AEW viewers is higher than it is for WWE viewers. However, WWE has a more diverse audience in terms of the racial breakdown of their viewers. AEW still more white viewers by percentage than WWE programs, who have a higher percentage of black viewers, and in some cases a higher percentage of Hispanic viewers and of viewers of other races. And if you look at, this is the Nielsen Universe estimate, so sort of what's generally the breakdown of viewers across television households, and you can see that I guess AEW is within the norm of the universe overall, and NW is over-indexing when it comes to viewers who are people of color. So there's that. There's those facts. And if we look at the breakdown among men and women, we can see that AEW programs are about 70-30, right? 70-30, especially within the last few months. Whereas Raw, Smackdown are more like 40-60. So W programs are both, they have more women watching and they have more people of color watching by percentage. So there's that. Yes. In some days, I look at my Twitter replies, and I think I see lots of people arguing about WWE and AEW, and some days I think, how can I make my mentions even more hostile and argumentative? So there's that. Wider TV. We could talk about wider TV and competition. I guess something that comes to mind here when we're doing all these comparisons here. Let's go back to our big scoreboard. When we're doing all these comparisons here, people will yell at me and say that, well, you really shouldn't compare Raw and Dynamite. I mean, they're on different nights, and Raw is going against Monday Night Football, which is very true. I mean, Monday Night Football is almost certainly the most watched program on cable. Now, AEW, on the other hand, also went against, and probably Raw did too, but AEW did go against a lot of premiere programming this week, or this Wednesday, in terms of The Masked Singer had its first episode of the season, the Survivor had its season premiere, other programs that I don't know the names of as well. And if we look at what I was trying to do on an Excel spreadsheet here, which I will now pull into view, let's see, I'll do this so we can see it on the screen here. What I wanted to do here is, so I'm going to adjust this for number of minutes too. This is sort of a made-up branded metric, but I think it makes sense. So if we look at, this is from August 11th. I've just got a chunk of recent time here, and we've got P1849, P2 Plus. So what this is I've taken all the data that we get from Showbiz Daily, which is 150 cable originals, plus the information that Showbiz Daily reports for broadcast programming, which is, I don't know, like a dozen more programs. They're usually among the most watched programs on TV because they're on broadcast networks, which have a higher reach than cable. So we've got more than a month plus here. If we look at, we don't need this blank here, we'll make that go away. But if we look at, we could probably make this bigger too so you can see it a little bit better. Slide that over, right? So I've adjusted this for duration, and sort of divided the duration. So this is the total number of minutes that all the programs that we have on record for this day, the total duration for all those programs, and we've sort of taken the sum of the 1849 ratings and the sum of the P2 Plus viewership, and we're dividing that by the minutes here. So what I want to do with this data is ask, how tough was the competition? This is the entire day. So it's not just, ideally we would want to look at 8 to 10 in the case of Dynamite and 8 to 11 in the case of Raw. But maybe this gives us a hint. On Monday, the key demo, measurement here, let's call it 5.7 to Wednesday's 7.25. But in total viewership, that number on Monday is higher than it was on Wednesday. So we don't get a real clear story here that Monday was a tougher night than Wednesday. But what about the week before that? A 9.57. This is the night that there was ESPN and ABC broadcasting Monday Night Football. I put this together very shortly before I started the stream, as you might be able to tell. This probably is not separating out for the fact that Shova has reported sort of a redundant viewership for both ESPN and ESPN/ABC. But anyway, Monday is the toughest night on all of the weekdays, which, if I salvage this into being something meaningful here, I have broken this down. This is just for cable. Let's make this a little bit smaller so it will fit on the screen. This is for cable. This is 18 to 49. These are both 18 to 49. This is excluding cable, or excluding news and including news. And what we see here is that Monday, in the dark green here, has by far the strongest 18 to 49 viewership to go up against. So far, though, this year, Wednesday has been almost the same. It has been actually greater than Monday in 18 to 49 when you include news. And maybe that's got to do with, like, January 6th was a Wednesday. I would have to look deeper into this, but I guess what I'm reading from this is it's not a clear-cut case to me that Monday, and granted, now let's remember, we're only early in the Monday Night Football season, so probably by the time this year is up, this will be well ahead of Wednesday. Monday will be well ahead of Wednesday, but we'll see. So there's that. Okay. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Hopefully my audio has been coming through okay, and I will scroll through the chat to see if there are any questions. MJ from NJ says, what a show last night. Shout out to the Wrestlenomics godfather, Mookie, who made his night by stopping to chat before the show. I heard about this. I got a DM about this, that there was a Mookie sighting last night for at least one person, at least MJ, who was there at Arthur Ashe Stadium. Let's see here. Nigel says, is the AEW number a sign of the ceiling? I think a lot of this has to do with what I guess people are wondering, why wasn't the AEW number better? I think AEW was against tougher competition last night than it was in some of the recent weeks where it did really well. Wrestling popularity and viewership, sort of genuine growth and interest, I don't think it happens overnight. There are short-term bursts that we've obviously seen in terms of, if we go back to the second Rampage with CM Punk, there are short-term bursts that we'll see, but as far as sustained increases and trends that are positive, I think it takes time. I guess if you're somebody who's cheering on, and I really do think this is in a way that people don't talk about, what we're seeing is it's sort of like two sports teams going against each other, and each sports team has its fans, and there are some people who are just sort of observing the game, not as interested in one side or the other, and we can argue about who's really on what side or to what extent, but I think sort of along the lines of what I was talking about earlier, in terms of people wanting some sort of justice for the bad product that they feel that W has delivered. A lot of people are rooting on AEW. I see that in a lot of ways. In the at least the feedback to my tweets, for example, people want to see AEW do well, and that's business-wise, that's a good thing for AEW, and something that they should be able to harness into driving fan interest, so that you've got fans who want to see whatever they want the destiny for WWE to be. They want a strong alternative to exist, and that should drive consumption and sales in a number of ways. So is this the ceiling? No, I mean, you can always. I think AEW will continue to collect more talent that, I guess at this point, just doesn't fit in as well to what Vince McMahon really wants out of his creative. I'm thinking of Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and Johnny Gargano, who reportedly have their deals ending sometime around the end of this year, and so I think there's going to be talent like that, and there'll be more talent whose contracts eventually will come up. Everybody's contract's going to end eventually, and they're going to be left with the option, if they want to explore whether they want to wrestle for other companies than the one that they wrestle for currently. And we're going to see more. We're probably going to see more flow of talent from WWE or maybe elsewhere to AEW, and there may be, I don't know, more opportunities for AEW to drive additional interest and to create stars that benefit their business. Let's see here. MJ asks question: on average, if you have an average, what does the T+3 look like in terms of adding, I guess you mean DVR viewership, adding to total viewership? Do they get a meaningful bump in delay viewing or not much more? Can you quantify? I barely ever look at DVR viewership. I think DVR viewership for WWE by percentage is stronger than it is for AEW. I think that speaks to the urgency with which those audiences feel like they have to watch those programs. But I don't know what the DVR viewership is. I know, at least in terms of the Smackdown viewership, you can find that stuff on spoiler.tv. I'm not sure where publicly defined the AEW DVR viewership or the Raw or the NXT DVR viewership. Let's see here. I'm looking for more question marks. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Let's see. AJ asks, since 2014, can you tell me any TV show that on cable that the rating is up from 2014? I'm sure there are some. Let's see. But no, it's true that most TV is down. I mean, if we look at that chart that I was looking at a moment ago, we can see sort of generally that the average program, I think this is the average program adjusted for time. This is sort of a weird Brandon metric again, but the average program adjusted for time was doing a 0.36 in 2016. I don't have the data ready to go as far back as 2014, but you can see it declines nearly every year. And we can see if we exclude news, it declines probably even a stronger decline. I can't think of a program off the top of my head that's in 2014 had lower viewership than it does now, and that's the nature of linear TV. Is you've got, and not just the nature of linear TV, where people are subscribing to television in fewer numbers, but also I think another factor is that there's just more competition for your time in a variety of ways, whether it's your smartphone or I think mainly that. Just there's gaming. There's just all sorts of ways to entertain oneself these days. I just saw an article, at least among Android devices, saying that TikTok has now surpassed YouTube. So we've got people are spending their time more so watching streaming or watching YouTube or watching TikTok. Or watching a Wrestlenomics stream, for that matter. I heard that the numbers for Wrestlenomics viewership are really growing these days. There's an example of something that's been up since 2014, Wrestlenomics viewership. All right, we can answer a question from the King of Strong Style, who seems to be defiant here. Well, if AEW TV is so much better, why aren't they doing numbers that WWE is doing? Like, people can say it's bad, but compared to other TV shows, I don't see that. There's no question that, let's look at something that's meaningful to that. This is a good example right here. Obviously, Smackdown is doing nearly, in terms of total viewership, is doing nearly double what Dynamite did last night in its third highest rating ever. And I think this somewhat goes back to the demographic breakdown. If we were to chop off everybody over the age of 50, these numbers, the viewership is much more comparable. I think there's a captive audience of older people who are watching on linear TV, who are watching WWE in greater numbers, and that's where the total viewership difference largely comes from. I think too, if we lived in a world where there wasn't any internet, and there weren't smartphones, and there was only really linear TV, like the world that I grew up in as a kid, I guess. If it was still 1992 or something, I think we would see more information that would tell us that there's a larger audience of kids for WWE, and I think AEW is probably more of an audience of younger adults and middle-aged adults. I think that's what's happening there, and there are a lot of wrestling fans. I've been thinking about this lately, and I think we maybe started to talk about it a bit on the podcast last Sunday with Chris Gullo, that I think there's this bifurcation which is sort of what WWE is trying to at least language itself as. We're not wrestling. We're sports entertainment. We're a media company, and we're not pro wrestling. And they're doing this in some ways to make themselves more palatable to advertisers and to business partners. But I kind of don't really believe this, but we can put it like this, that it almost seems as if there are two increasingly discrete, separate audiences emerging here. There are WWE fans who you can encounter on Twitter. There are wrestling fans who you can encounter on Twitter. And not just Twitter, I'm just using that as an example that at least I'm familiar with and people listening might be familiar with. There are, people who are probably watching WWE and have become aware of WWE at some point in the last at least 20 years when they've been dominating the wrestling scene and are barely aware of AEW. I think that's starting to give way a bit. But WWE still has this 20-year time of having dominated the wrestling industry in the major league of wrestling that nobody came anywhere near to. I mean, Impact, TNA came kind of close, but not nearly as close as AEW is getting. So I think there's, and especially when it comes to people over the age of 50, I think these are people who have found, their habitual viewing. They found what they like to do on, whether it's Monday night or Tuesday night or Friday night, and that's what they're going to do. They're sort of brand loyal to WWE, and I think we have a lot of kids too who are, like I said, disproportionately interested in WWE versus AEW, who probably don't value the same things in wrestling as young and middle-aged adults do. Some of those kids will grow to feel similarly to how young adults and middle-aged adults do. Some of them will, and some of them might just be, lifelong WWE fans, or some of them might just eventually cycle out of wrestling entirely, as kids often do. They change their interests frequently. Yeah, why is the viewership, if AEW is so much better, then why is the viewership not bigger? Because WWE has had, it depends on when you want to start the clock, 1982 or the 1950s, or at least since 2001, being by far, without question, the leading brand in pro wrestling. And they've had a lot of time to allow people to get to know their brand and allow people to get to know, all of their events and all of their TV shows and their various WWE superstars. And that's a great value for them. Okay. If there are Any more questions? I'm a big fan of the If era. Let's see here. I do have some final thoughts that I think I will get to. Or I will... Okay. I think I've generated some conversation here. That's fine. So I will have some final thoughts here about some concerns I have about AEW. Let's see if we can get to them here. As you may have seen, a lot of people... How long have we been going? 41 minutes. That's good. So a lot of people have been sort of suggesting sort of trepidation about... you look at all this talent that's moving over to AEW and look at sort of these peak ratings that they've been doing lately. And I just wanted to sort of join in on that message and say that I'm worried too that AEW might be getting too good. I mean, you have to be careful in pro wrestling. History has told us that, when you put out shows that are good, again and again, you have to stop and question whether that's sustainable. Because once you start to put out good shows on a regular basis, people are going to expect good shows all the time. And I'm just worried that AEW might not be able to keep up on that cycle of putting out good shows. And then when they're not able to deliver good shows anymore, people might become disappointed. I mean, if you're AEW, you have to think about maybe starting to put on some bad shows. You can't let fans be this satisfied this much of the time as they purportedly were following Grand Slam last night. Or even, if you think about this, if fans are satisfied, what reason will they have to keep on tuning in? The last 20 years of WWE history have taught me that you have to piss off the fans on a regular basis. You have to show a disregard for your fans' sensibilities at least every once in a while, or ideally most of the time. Otherwise, people will just get their fill and they'll never come back. I think of that investors call on the earnings call way back in, I think it was early 2015, where Vince McMahon reacting to the cancel WWE Network hashtag about Roman Reigns winning the Royal Rumble. He said that those people just didn't get what they wanted for Christmas, and I know those people are going to keep on tuning in. It's like every relationship. You have to kind of treat your partner badly if you're going to maintain the status quo. So, I mean, and to be fair, you have to think about the casual fan. Do you think the casual fan is going to be just attracted to a good wrestling show with good promos and good storylines and good wrestling matches? I think if AEW is going to become more mainstream, they have to start thinking about maybe doing more whimsical comedy. The zany kind of entertainment that WWE has produced year after year, while flourishing, as we discussed, financially. The kind of entertainment that everyone from a 76-year-old billionaire to a 76-year-old billionaire with a 13-year-old sense of humor can find hilarious. People of all ages and mental states. So I'm just afraid that if AEW doesn't regroup and re-strategize and recalibrate and make the necessary adjustments, then AEW might become nothing but a company that delivers big ratings, sure, strong pay-per-view buys, I guess, and just gets huge crowd reactions in front of sold-out crowds, but that's all. And at the end of the day, at least as the last 2 decades plus have taught us, that is just not the way that a successful US-based wrestling / media company grows its revenues. There's just no precedent for that in a lot of our lifetimes. And I would add finally that it's as the game Paul Levesque once said early in the Wednesday Night War, you got to remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we all know how that turned out for AEW. So I will leave you with that. Plugs. Thanks for listening and watching. I am doing this every Thursday evening, 5:30 p.m. What is that? 4:30 Central, 2:30 Pacific, 9:30 GMT time. I googled that. I hope that's right. Every Thursday we're going to do this, it looks like. Please hit the like button, share this video if you want, if you like it. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. That goes a long way. You can get, if you don't know already, if you don't subscribe already, you can get my TV ratings reports that come out every weekday just about. That's at patreon.com/Wrestlenomics for just $5 a month. You also get access to the Wrestlenomics viewership spreadsheet. That's this big spreadsheet right here that we looked at earlier. That's the spreadsheet that I use to go through all this data to try to figure out what's going on. Plus, there's other content and audio, including the audio of this. If you find it more convenient to just consume this through audio only, I will have the audio out on the Patreon feed soon tonight. And you can follow me, as always, and argue with people in the replies at Brandon Thurston and at Wrestlenomics. I will talk to everybody next time.